So artificial intelligence is getting incredibly powerful, like by the day. But who's actually in charge? Who's making the rules? In this explainer, we are going to dive into the global race to build some guardrails for AI. We're talking everything from brand new jobs created just to police algorithms, all the way to the first major laws designed to rein them in.
Okay, so here's our game plan. We're going to start with a super hot new job that tells you a lot about the tech world's biggest anxieties right now. Then, we'll get into the risks that are fueling this whole thing, look at the first global rulebook, and figure out how we can actually build trust in these systems. And finally, we'll ask the big one. What does the future of oversight even look like? All right, let's kick things off with one of the hottest new careers in tech. It's a role that's on a fast track to the C-suite, and it was created for basically one reason: to police the ethics of artificial intelligence.
Let's just start with a number that tells a huge story. $350,000. That's the potential top-end salary for a chief AI ethics officer. And what's wild is that just a few years ago, this executive job, it pretty much didn't exist.
Now you see a number like that and you've got to ask, why? Why so high? Well, it's classic supply and demand. The demand is exploding, we're talking 15% growth every year, but the pool of people who can actually do this job is incredibly small. It can take a company 4 to 6 months just to find the right person. So if you have that unique mix of tech, ethics, and legal smarts, it's a direct path to the executive suite.
So what do these officers do all day? Well, you could call them the conscience of the algorithm. They're the internal watchdog. They literally write the company's rulebook for AI, they run ethical reviews before product launches, they hunt for hidden bias in the code, and they make sure the company is keeping up with this growing web of global regulations.
Which, of course, leads to the next big question: why does this job suddenly even exist? Well, it's because the real-world risks of AI are now just too big to ignore.
You know, to really get why this role is so valuable, you have to understand the kind of disasters they're being hired to prevent. And this isn't some abstract philosophical debate. We're talking about stopping real, concrete harm out in the world.
They fight against stuff like this. Right in the middle of the war in Ukraine, this super sophisticated deepfake of President Zelensky pops up, telling his own soldiers to surrender. I mean, this wasn't some hypothetical threat. This was weaponized misinformation being used in an active war zone.
But the danger goes way beyond just political deepfakes. The list of what keeps people up at night is long, and it's growing. We're talking about AI systems that discriminate against people in hiring or lending, models that were trained by scraping copyrighted art and writing from across the entire internet without anyone's permission, and the very real potential for AI to be used to exploit the most vulnerable people in our society.
So, with risks this huge, it's no surprise that companies and governments are realizing that just hoping for the best, well, that's not a strategy. Self-regulation isn't going to cut it. So now, we're seeing the creation of official, legally binding rulebooks.
And the first and biggest rulebook on the world stage is the European Union's AI Act. This thing is a landmark piece of legislation. It's the world's first comprehensive legal framework for AI. And its core idea is actually pretty simple: regulate the technology based on the risk it poses.
The whole logic is built on this risk pyramid. At the very top, you have unacceptable risk. These are uses of AI that are just banned outright. Think government-run social scoring systems. A step down, you have high-risk stuff like AI in medical devices or hiring, and that gets very strict rules. Then there's limited-risk AI, like a chatbot, which just has to tell you it's a bot. And at the bottom, minimal-risk things like a spam filter in your email. They're left alone. It's a simple principle. The bigger the potential harm, the tighter the rules.
The law also creates this really clear chain of who's responsible. It separates the provider, the company that builds the AI, from the deployer, the company that actually uses it. So let's say a tech company builds an AI for hiring. They're the provider, and they have to prove it's safe. But the company that buys that AI to screen job applicants, they're the deployer, and they're on the hook for making sure it's used fairly and that a human is still in the loop.
Okay, so we've got the specialized jobs, and we've got the new rulebook. But how does all this actually create something that we, the public, can trust? Like, how do we know if an AI is actually safe?
Well, if you think about it, we have systems for this in other parts of our lives. We all know this logo, right? Energy Star. Gives you a quick, reliable signal that your appliance is energy efficient.
And we have certifications like LEED that tell us if a building meets certain green standards. These labels build trust because they're based on a standard, verifiable process.
So the big idea behind AI accountability is, why not do the same thing for algorithms?
We need simple, trustworthy signals that tell us an AI has been audited, checked for bias, and is safe before it gets used on us in the real world. And that's exactly what's being built, using some pretty concrete tools. We're talking about independent, third-party audits, kind of like what happens with financial accounting. We're talking about mandatory transparency reports, where companies have to show their work. In Europe, a high-risk AI will literally need a formal conformity assessment and will get a CE mark, just like a toaster or a toy, to prove it meets the legal standards.
And this all brings us to our final, and let's be honest, probably the trickiest question of all. We're building all these impressive systems of human oversight, but can our rules, our people, can they possibly keep up with the technology they're trying to govern?
You know, a lot of experts in this field argue that the ultimate answer isn't going to be just one perfect law or one silver bullet piece of tech. As this quote from researchers at Northwestern points out, the key is an ongoing process. It's about bringing together people from government, industry, and the public to constantly talk and weigh the risks and the benefits together.
And that really leaves us with this final, crucial thought. We are, essentially, building the plane while it's in midair. We're designing this complex system of human governance for a technology that is moving at a speed that is hard to even comprehend. So the biggest challenge ahead isn't just writing this first set of rules. It's making sure our entire system of accountability can learn and adapt just as fast as the AI itself.